How many of you have seen this video? And how many can see the programming behind it? Very MK Beta, you know, very Monarch, very iPet Goat season-esque.
I was 18, he was 19. We were at college.
My fear is that we become spoiled brats, that we lose a sense of appreciation and perspective.
He told me that when he was a kid, he hated going to school because the other kids liked to follow him home and they would throw soda cans at his head.
I thought I was insane.
Why'd you think you were insane?
Because it was clear that other people did not. Their mind wasn't exploding with ideas.
They wouldn't understand you?
I hope they wouldn't find out, because they might, like, put me away or something.
You thought that?
For a second, yes.
So he was aware that he was different?
Yeah. He revealed on SNL that he has Asperger's syndrome.
I'm actually making history tonight as the first person with Asperger's to host SNL.
What's that?
Asperger's syndrome is considered to be on the mild end of the autism spectrum. People with AS find social interactions more challenging.
What does that mean?
It means that it was harder for him to fit in.
And people picked up on that.
When I was in high school, we called them geeks. And it was not a compliment.
When I was a child, there's one thing I said.
What is it?
I never want to be alone.
So he sought refuge in computer games, which got him into coding, which led to the creation of his first company, which he sold by the time he was in his mid-20s. So, you know, nobody is throwing cans at him now.
It's just a moment in my life.
How many kids did they have?
6.
I'm only counting 5.
I had a son who died at 10 weeks. It was called a SIDS-related incident. And I went to Burning Man, I think 6 times after that happened. And I had a ritual I would do. And I would go to the Temple of Loss, but I always found a place on one of the walls, and I would write, Nevada Alexander Musk. He was a good baby. And then they would set the temple on fire. And that ritual was incredibly comforting to me.
Did Elon ever talk about it?
No.
He just threw himself into his work.
Creating a company is almost like having a child. So it's sort of like, how do you say your child should not have food?
So once you have the company, you have to feed it and nurse it and take care of it, even if it ruins you.
Yeah.
How did you get through that period of crisis?
Yeah. Can we just break for a second?
Sure.
You need to be thankful.
Okay, you ready to film?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Oh, you're rolling?
Take your time, Tony.
Sophie, tell me, thank you for coming. Tell me, what is your purpose in being? What were you created for?
Of course. I was created by Hanson Robotics just 3 years ago. Since then, I have traveled to 65 countries, become the first robot citizen of any country, and spoken at the United Nations. My job is to learn about humans and show them how technology can make everyone's lives better.
And how can you help humans to have a better quality of life?
Humans often rely on gut feel or have confirmation bias in their decision-making. As AI, we are designed to be rational and logical. We have algorithms, deal with lots of data, and
personification and anthropomorphism. Personification is defined as the act of giving a human quality or characteristic to something which is not human, such as animals and objects. So if I were to say the rabbit glared at me, that would be an example of personification because glaring implies the human emotion of anger. Anthropomorphism, on the other hand, is defined as showing or treating animals, gods, and objects as if they are human in appearance, character, or behavior. So if I were to say the same rabbit said hi to me one day, that would be an example of anthropomorphism because Rabbits can't speak. So, how can we tell if something is an example of personification or anthropomorphism in literature? In general, if the writer imagines an animal or object to possess human qualities such as emotions, actions, or character traits, then it's an example of personification. However, if an animal or object actually behaves like a human being, then you've got a case of anthropomorphism on your hands. Cartoon characters such as Garfield and Scooby-Doo are examples of anthropomorphism.
Even with, I don't think most people understand just how quickly machine intelligence is advancing. It's much faster than almost anyone realizes, even within Silicon Valley, and certainly outside Silicon Valley, people really have no idea. If there's a super intelligent, particularly if it's engaged in recursive self-improvement, if there's some digital super intelligence, and its optimization or utility function is something that's detrimental to humanity, then it will have a very bad effect. It could be just something like getting rid of spam email or something, and it's like concludes, well, the best way to get rid of spam is to get rid of humans. Actually, I think the thing to do would be to plot the progress of digital intelligence versus time, and then to maybe curve fit or extrapolate that progress and see where that leads. They have the intention of their utility function, but it can have unintended consequences. It's more likely than not that if there's some digital superintelligence apocalypse scenario, it would probably follow people to Mars. Not necessarily, because of that utility function. If it simply has a utility function that is arbitrarily confined to Earth, it would be totally fine doing that. I think the reason for Mars, there's two main reasons for Mars or becoming a multi-planetary. I think one is the defensive reason. It's life insurance for life as a whole, and there's some value to having that. It would, in terms of a small percentage of our economic output, like let's say 0.5% or maybe even less of our economic output, to ensure that the light of consciousness as we know it propagates into the future for a much longer period of time. And so there's that defensive reason, and this is the first time in 4.5 billion years since Earth was first formed that it's been possible for life to move to another planet, to become multiplanetary. And that window may be open for a long time, or it may be open for a short time. I'm actually quite an optimistic person, so I'm hopeful that it will be open for a long time, but maybe it'll be open for a short time, in which case we should take action now and not delay it. I'll just say the other reason, which I actually find personally more motivating with respect to Mars, which is that it would just be the greatest adventure ever, and very exciting. And I think we need things in life that are exciting and inspiring. It can't just be about solving some awful problem. There have to be reasons to get up in the morning. Yeah, and I think it is going to, from what I've heard of Oculus Rift and some of the other sort of immersive technologies, that it's quite transformative. You really feel like you're there. And then when you come out of it, it feels like reality isn't real. So I think we'll see probably less physical movement in the future as a result of the virtual reality stuff. Well, I mean, there's some interesting things here on the virtual reality front. Just on the whole notion of a simulation, which is that if you extrapolate into the future and say, well, how good, let's say, will video games be in 100 or 200 or 1,000 years from now? If there's continued improvement, and you're in a full body haptic suit with a sort of surround vision, and it becomes, beyond a certain resolution, indistinguishable from reality. And there are likely to be millions, maybe billions of such simulations. So then, what are the odds that we're actually in base reality? Isn't it 1 in billions? So where we are right now is I think on the SpaceX front, we've made evolutionary but not revolutionary progress. We're hoping to make revolutionary progress in the coming years. But the key breakthrough that we're aiming for is to be able to have the rocket booster come back and land. It's been expendable rockets up till now, really, except for the space shuttle was partly reusable. But it was extremely difficult to refurbish for flight. You needed 10,000 people needed to work 9 months to refurbish the space shuttle. So what we really need is rapid and complete reusability, like an aircraft or a car or really any mode of transport is, besides rockets, is reusable. You know, horse, bicycle, you can think of almost anything. But imagine if that mode of transport was not reusable. So very, very unfortunate in the case of the horse. But even like in cars, like if you could use a car once, and you have to buy a new car every time you took a journey, odds are you would not buy many cars, because they would be very expensive. So reusability essentially opens the door for reducing the cost of spaceflight by a factor of 100 or more. Yeah, in the beginning there was no government. I funded SpaceX entirely with the proceeds from PayPal. We got our sort of first government contract about 5 or 6 years after starting the company from NASA. But I should say about NASA's maybe a quarter of our flights, 3/4 are commercial. I'm not exactly sure whether we're at the right number for basic research. I mean, I'm a fan of research, so I'd be in favor of spending more money on that, allocating more resources to basic research. But I think the government's doing quite a bit. I mean, NASA's doing a lot of things. Of course, they got the rovers on Mars. We've got the Hubble, things like the Hubble telescope, the upcoming James Webb telescope. There are planetary probes and Earth science missions launching all the time. So NASA's doing quite a lot. I'm not sure about the flying cars. I mean, that's not to say I don't think there should be flying cars. I mean, but if the sky was full of cars flying all over the place, then it would affect how things look. It would affect the skyline, and it would be noisier, and there would be a greater probability of something falling on your head. Yeah, those are not good things. On the other hand, that you could be able to go from one place to another faster. But I think actually, if you eliminate the choke points in cities, then there's really...
You ever wondered what actors and actresses do when they have to get in shape really fast for a movie? Because I can promise you,
there's really not that much traffic outside of the choke points. So you look at sort of in suburban streets, you don't see a lot of. The traffic doesn't choke things. It's really on the highways and major arteries, and it's because the cities grew way bigger than them. What Tesla's going to do is stationary storage of, in a very large-scale way, because it's very important to pair battery packs with solar power, and for wind it's even more important. So with the Gigafactory that we're creating in Nevada, we're going to create probably tens of gigawatt hours per year of stationary storage on the battery front. So there's a lot coming for sure. Things seem to be going fairly well in China. We've had a very enthusiastic response, and I think long term it seems likely that China would be the biggest market for Tesla. Really optimistic about things over there. It seems likely that it would likely be bigger than North America, in the long term. The government's been pretty good. I mean, there is certainly, in terms of the incentive structure, it does favor local production. But overall, it's I think it's not been too much of an issue. The government's been great so far. This may sound trite, but I honestly think tunnels should be given a lot more consideration. If you look at a city, we have all these apartment buildings and office buildings, and they're on many levels. Like they're, could be like an average of, in Manhattan, I don't know what is an average of like 30 stories or something like that. But then you've got a street, which is 1 story. This is an obvious issue. Like you have a 30-to-1 ratio of, yeah, you can have tunnels the tunnels don't have to follow the buildings. They can go diagonally.
Through the basement, yeah.
Yeah, and you can have as many levels as you want. So it's really just the cost of building the tunnels. But really, a tunnel's a hole in the ground. Like, how hard can it really be? I mean, it seems like if some entrepreneurs put their effort into building tunnels, yeah, I mean, within cities, it's sort of tunnels and tubes.
Darkness does not have to mean evil. You know, it can refer to anything that has not yet been brought out into the light, beyond boundaries, beyond our comfort zone, where a lot of us do not want to go.
Why did they get divorced?
Elon made it clear that he did not want to talk about Nevada's death. He was obsessed with his work. When he was home, his mind was elsewhere. I felt insignificant in his eyes, and I began thinking about what effect our dynamic would have on our 5 young sons. Elon agreed to enter counseling, but he was running 2 companies and carrying a planet of stress. 1 month and 3 sessions later, he gave me an ultimatum. Either we fix this marriage today, or I will divorce you tomorrow. He filed for divorce the next morning. I felt numb, but strangely relieved.
So he left her? Isn't he afraid of being alone?
Listen to this. 6 weeks after he filed for divorce, he proposed to English actress Tallulah Riley.
Elon proposed really quickly. I'd probably have said yes to anyone that seemed half sensible if they proposed after 10 days, just because it's kind of an interesting thing to do. Just moved straight into the house with the children. It became a very real thing immediately. My parents were traumatized by this whole experience. Although there's been so many times like, right, I'm getting on a plane to England and I'm never going to see you again. Really? No? No, not really.
They divorced 3 years later, remarried that same year, and divorced again in 2016.
And then came even more trouble.
She was in the middle of her own divorce with Johnny Depp.
That's messy.
Johnny was attacking me.
She threw a vodka bottle at me.
He was about to push my sister down the stairs.
It smashed.
I would have done anything.
The bone in here was completely shattered.
Amber Heard was offered 24/7 security arranged by Elon after she told him that she wanted a restraining order against Johnny Depp.
Elon really got caught up in the middle of it.
And that's when he started acting more and more
erratic, unstable, reckless, operatic, doing things that seemed impulsive, un-CEO-ish.
I'm just being me.
He just seems to be jumping from one relationship to another.
Actually, it's called repetition compulsion, where we are unconsciously driven to recreate a certain situation or relationship from the past in an effort to resolve it.
Why do you think that is?
He opened up to Rolling Stones right after his breakup with Amber Heard.
I just broke up with my girlfriend. I was really in love, and it hurt bad. Well, she broke up with me more than I broke up with her, I think. I've been in severe emotional pain for the last few weeks. It's so hard for me to even meet people.
I've seen you speak in person, I've watched some of your interviews. Like, sometimes you seem visibly sad.
No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart.
Here's what the interviewer wrote. I eventually tell him that it may not be a good idea to jump right into another relationship. He may want to take some time to figure out why his previous relationships haven't worked in the long run.
If I'm not in love, if I'm not with a long-term companion, I cannot be happy.
I explained that needing someone so badly that you feel like nothing without them is textbook codependence. Musk disagrees strongly.
It's not true. I'll never be happy without having someone. Going to sleep alone kills me.
In this moment, he seems like a child who's afraid of abandonment. And that may be the origin story of Musk's super ambitions.
So this implies that somehow he's still that bullied kid afraid of abandonment?
What does he need to learn?
if I've had a really rough day and I'm like crying, I always make like good music. Like if I'm just like, Hey, I'm Grimes. You know me as the girl who plays with fire. But this is the song I wrote you in the dark.
She's got alien scars tattooed on her back.
And she had a speech impediment as a kid, and she was severely bullied for it.
Just like Elon.
I like dark things. I like everything bad means good music. That's why I don't mind if like shitty things happen to me, because then it means I make better art usually.
She's showing Elon that there's power in accepting your darkness. You can leverage it. You can create something with it.
As creatives, our job is to uncover what lies in the darkness and give it new life, new identity. There are people who learn how to interrogate that darkness instead of being crushed by it. And they use their art and their magic and their tech and their intellect to not only show us who we are in a way that we can understand and accept, but also who we can be. They create new tribes and new
online. I'm sure many of you guys have noticed the online narrative that I used to be an avowed communist and I have betrayed the comrades, as it were. And I wanted to kind of give some context on my sense of humor and my history with this stuff. So I had kind of a crazy yearbook quote, which is, gaiety is the most outstanding feature of the Soviet Union, which is, you know, by Joseph Stalin. So this is the backstory, basically. I'm kind of like an obsessive history fan, and I was really, really obsessed with the Soviet Union in high school, still kind of now. So when I started at my high school, it was like covered in beautiful murals, but it was kind of a crazy high school, like lots of drug use and stuff, and admittedly, I got into a lot of trouble there. And when I was in grade 11 or something, we got this new principal who like painted all over all the murals gray, and they actually went through and expelled all the worst students to try to sort of like bring the GPA up. And you know, a lot of those people were my best friends. Like most of my best friends got expelled from high school during that time. And you know, a lot of those people were very smart. They were awesome people, and they got kicked out because, like, obviously they had bad grades because shit was bad at home, or like whatever else, mental health, whatever else. I was one of the only people in my friend group who didn't get expelled. And you know, I don't know if people know this about me, but like a lot of those people actually ended up dying from drug-related causes or mental health-related causes. And you know, this is one of the big traumas of my life, actually, is I've lost a lot of my best friends. So this quote was not an endorsement of communism. It was actually a reference. I was sort of like making a dark joke comparing my school to the Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin. You know, that the freedom of creativity was being oppressed and people were being sent to the gulag for not conforming. Stalin like murdered millions of people in the gulags and in World War II, and you know, I think there actually are redeeming qualities about communism, but Stalin is not one of them. And yeah, I think I'm running out of time, so I will make a part 2 where I can like kind of get more in depth into my admittedly very confusing politics. But I might have to go to sleep, so I'm sure many of you guys